Hello, everyone. Welcome to Infant Store's latest live webinar, Automatically Record Data Science Activity with MLflow Kernel. In today's event, we will showcase a Jupyter kernel that is integrated with MLflow. There will also be a Q&A session at the end, along with more information about our company. So thank you for joining us, and please welcome Infant Store CTO, Jitendra.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. A brief introduction about myself. So I'm Jitendra Pandey. I'm co-founder and CTO at Infant Store. I have been involved with big data for 12 plus years before joining Infant Store. As part of big data, I was involved with a bunch of open source projects in Apache ecosystem. I contributed as a committer and PMC member in Hadoop, Ozone, Hive, and a few other open source projects. And I'm a member of Apache Software Foundation. I hold a master's degree in computer science from Stanford. We also have with us Jagen Sundar. He's co-founder and CEO at Infant Store. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he was CTO at Vandisco before starting Infant Store. Vandisco is a well-known company in big data ecosystem, which provides big data application. So an agenda for today. First, I'll talk about MLflow and what it offers us. And then we will come to the main topic of the call today, MLflow kernel, the key motivations behind it and how we implement it. And then we will dive into the demos. First, I will show the MLflow kernel deployment in a Jupyter Lab environment. And then we will train a convolutional neural network within MLflow kernel, which will demonstrate the capabilities of the MLflow kernel. And in the end, we will also cover the SageMaker deployment of MLflow kernel, which will be useful for folks who are using SageMaker in AWS environment. So why do we need a system like MLflow? So if we look at data science as a software engineering discipline, it also shares a lot in common with traditional lab science. Let's consider, say, a chemistry lab in which a chemist performs a bunch of experiments where you tweak some of the parameters of the experiments, like you change the temperature or pressure, you change the catalysts, and each and every model or parameter of the experiment has to be recorded, and the corresponding results have to be recorded, and any other observation that the scientist makes has to be recorded in a notebook. Traditionally, it was done in a lab notebook. Now, data science has similar needs because data science is also a highly iterative process. You perform an experiment maybe 100 times or thousands of times, and at every step, we tweak certain parameters. We may be tweaking the code as well. We may be tweaking the structure of our model, and we run the experiment, record the results, record any other observation, and along with any other parameter of the experiment. Now, everything that we note down here, every piece of information that is recorded, is a piece of knowledge that data scientist or his or her organization want to track for intellectual property reasons, or just for comparison with various experimental models that they have been tracking over the process. So MLflow offers these capabilities by tracking our work. Each and every experiment and run is recorded in the MLflow infrastructure. It helps data scientists to stay organized, because if data scientists are tweaking the code, tweaking the parameters, it's very easy to lose track of what really happened. And sometimes we have to go back 3 days back or a week back and recall that what we tested and what results we obtained. So this kind of granular tracking is really crucial. And every step of this process adds to our knowledge. Even if the experiment failed, we learn from that experiment, like what did not work. So what worked and what did not work, both are crucial pieces of in data, which is part of the intellectual property of a company. And we may have to track all this for legal reasons as well, because if we are generating prediction models, it may be required to provide some evidence of like what kind of data was used to generate a particular model, or how we arrived at a particular prediction which our models are producing. For patents or IP protection, we may have to produce evidence like how we generated a particular model, and this kind of tracking or this kind of information that we collect is useful for to prove our copyright on our intellectual property as well. So MLflow offers exactly these capabilities. It has granular experiment and run tracking. It also has a model registry where we can track each and every version of a model. We manage the life cycle of a model because when we train a new model, we archive the old version of the model. The new model goes to staging, then goes to production. So we have to record at each and every step, like what model was running in production or in staging at what time. And MLflow has an excellent support from all the MLflow libraries, all the ML libraries like PyTorch, TensorFlow, Scikit. And auto logging is a particularly useful feature where all the parameters of the training process are automatically logged and captured. And these libraries provide interfaces to log information into MLflow. MLflow is open source. Has a thriving open source community and one of the fastest growing open source projects. But when it comes to an enterprise setting, we need certain more capabilities. We need large scale because large number of experiments are being run on a large amount of data. Multiple organizations within the enterprise may be working on different experiments, and they all share the MLflow infrastructure. And we need a strict access control, authentication, and authorization because it is really important to ensure that only right people have access to the intellectual property of the company. Some of the data being used in the experimentation may be of sensitive nature. Therefore, for enterprise, this kind of authorization becomes really crucial. And for the tracking purpose, and also for from privacy reasons, the data versioning and strict data access control is also very important. For example, if I want to go back in time and see that why a particular model uh, did not work as well as we wanted to, and we want to see what kind of data it was trained on, we have to go back to the exact snapshot of data on which it was trained. Also, for legal reasons, we may have to prove like what data was used to train a particular model and what is the sensitivity nature of the data. And for all those reasons, it is very important to track the data versions along with our experiments and runs. In a large enterprise, it is possible that hundreds or thousands of data scientists are concurrently working, running experiments, and using the MLflow infrastructure. So we need that kind of a scale. And if the system goes down, these data scientists may not be able to work, their productivity goes down, and that is not acceptable. So it is very important that our system is up and running all the time. And given the importance of the information that is being tracked in MLflow, it is crucial that if there is a disaster like a data center goes down, we should be able to recover from that. We should be able to recover all the data and redeploy in a separate region. So some of these capabilities are not available in open source MLflow, and that's where InfinStore's MLflow offering helps. We have multiple flavors of MLflow offerings. We have a free in MLflow service that is available free of cost, and I will show you that in our demo also. And we also have an enterprise MLflow offering with some additional capabilities. Our enterprise MLflow offering also has a strong compute integration where you can manage your computations, your ML pipelines, and and do a lot more than what open source MLflow offers. So along with all the capabilities of MLflow, uh, we are, these libraries like I talked about auto logging, they capture all the parameters of the model, but we also want to track the code that being executed for our experimentation purpose. For example, if a data scientist is tweaking, running a Jupyter notebook and is tweaking the cell code and running their experiment, and now they do it hundreds of times. So very soon it's easy for them to forget like what change they made and what effect it had on the output. Now this code is not captured by autologging or any other library. Uh, yeah, sometimes people try to use Git, but it's very cumbersome to tweak something and do a Git commit and then run it again. And very soon you have proliferation of Git versions. And also it is important to be able to look at the code along with the output it produced. And therefore we want to ability to track the cell code along with the output of the experiment run. So also when the cell is executed, it produces an output on the screen, and this output could be simple log line, but it's very important for the data scientist to understand what really happened. And therefore they would want to record this output along with my experiment run, so that when they are reviewing their results, they can see exactly what happened when they tweak the code in a particular way. Data scientists do lots of visualizations in their notebook. They generate graphs, which is associated with the data. They generate graphs of certain outputs that their experiment code is producing. And we want the ability to record those graphs as well. Because again, when we are reviewing our experiments and runs, we should be able to look at those graphs and be able to recall what really happened without having to run the process again. Also, when we go back in time, we want to review a particular version of the model. It's a good idea if I have some record of some sample predictions that this model generated. And often data scientists will run a prediction right in the notebook and see the output visually. If that output is preserved, then when they are reviewing their model, they can always look at the predictions that were produced. And similarly, if you are using, say, doing some experiment in computer vision, often we visualize the data with some image renderings or the rendering of the output of the experiment, which are all images. And if these images are also captured along with my run and experiment, it gives us a complete picture of our experiment and what we did at what time. So MLflow kernel solves these capability problems, and it's implemented as a simple wrapper around an IPython kernel. It automatically starts the MLflow runs and uh, tracks your cell outputs. It automatically logs the cell code behind the scene, and any other output that is produced by the cell execution on the Jupyter notebook, like graphs or images, and everything is captured as artifacts of the run. So it helps you also organize your execution, because when you instantiate and the MLflow kernel, it creates a parent run in MLflow, and all the cell executions are captured as child run for that parent run. And every output of that cell goes as part of that child run. So therefore, you have all entire session of the kernel is recorded in one place in your MLflow infrastructure. It integrates perfectly with auto logging. So if you are using auto logging, you don't have to worry about starting a run. Just enable auto logging. And now MLflow kernel will capture all the parameters of the model, everything that the ML library is logging, and along with all the cell code and output that MLflow kernel itself captures. And I will show you a demo of this shortly. It is an open source project. It is Apache licensed. Let's take a quick look. So this is our MLflow code base. As I mentioned, this is Apache licensed, so free to use in any setting. And it has all the instructions for the deployment and how to use with an InfinStores MLflow service. And also along with SageMaker Studio. We will come back to this because InfinStore also offers a free to use MLflow kernel container, container image, which you can use to instantiate a SageMaker Studio application, and using this kernel, which is already pre-configured with InfinStore libraries to use the InfinStore MLflow service. So now let's dive to the demo. So first, I will demonstrate the deployment of MLflow kernel. In this demo, I will show integration with InfinStore's free MLflow service, but you can use your own MLflow service as well. That it works equally well with MLflow kernel. So first step is that you need an MLflow. So if you do not have an MLflow service, then you can just go to the InfinStore's homepage, and from there you can sign up for the InfinStore's free MLflow service. Provide a username and email. You need to provide an S3 location to store the artifacts, and just a couple of credentials. It could be role-based credentials for that particular artifact location. And once you have signed up, you just come to the MLflow UI page for the free.infinstore.com, and you log in, and in here you have your MLflow service ready to use. So like we can create an experiment, and we provide an artifact location to it, or the location that you configured earlier. And now we basically deploy the MLflow kernel, and we configure the MLflow kernel to use this particular MLflow service that we set up. So first step is to install the MLflow kernel package. It is a PyPy package, easy to install. And in a very few steps, we will be ready to use. So we have to install the kernel, install it in the kernel spec. So like by default, you have this Python 3 kernel. So with one simple execution, we will get the MLflow kernel spec as well. So now we can see that the MLflow kernel is available as well. And next step is to configure this MLflow kernel. There are a few configuration settings. And most important is to point it to the right MLflow service that you're using. If you're using MLflow free service, then this is what you have to provide, or your own MLflow service, and the experiment name where all your runs will be recorded. So if you have, say we just created phase research, so we change the name to phase research, and now we can launch our Jupyter lab. So in Jupyter Lab, we have this experiment. So now in here, you have to select the kernel, because normally by default, you will come with Python 3 kernel. Since we have installed the MLflow kernel, so it will show up in the drop down, and we select the kernel. Now, once we have selected the MLflow kernel and it is configured to talk to InfinStore service, InfinStore service is always authenticated. So therefore, it will ask you to authenticate. So it dumps these couple of lines in the output. So you just have to run those couple of lines to perform the login. It is the same username and password that you used to register to InfinStore service. And once you have logged in, it will create credentials and store it. You don't have to do this every time, because then those credentials will be renewed and refreshed automatically. So after that, you restart your kernel once, and now you're ready to use. And now we are performing the cell execution. When the first time it is executed, it starts the parent run and the child run, and we can see that a parent run is created, a child run is created, and child run is doing the expected thing. It has captured the code. There was no output, so nothing was captured, but we will see uh, that pretty soon. So yeah, so that concludes our demo for the deployment of MLflow along with the free service. Uh, the next, I want to show you the a training of a convolutional network with MLflow kernel. So this particular notebook and the data I have obtained from Kaggle competition, it detects the location of facial features on a face. So the training data consists of a few hand annotated facial images where we have annotated like the location of say nose or chin or eyes. And it will train the model to detect those locations in a facial image. It's a very interesting and a simple model, but really remarkably powerful. So let's go back to the training. So here is the notebook, and in this notebook, basically we have some of the images. The uh, data consists of a bunch of images and some CSV files, and we perform some pre-processing and some visualization of the data. And the training consists of a convolutional network, and see the auto logging is enabled here. So because this library TensorFlow and Keras, they automatically capture all the parameters of the model, and in the end we will run a prediction and we will see how the model performed. So first step is to select the MLflow kernel here, so that we get all the tracking capabilities of MLflow, and we select the kernel, and now we will start the execution. Okay, so yeah, so this is our MLflow service that is configured behind, and we will see the output in this MLflow deployment in this particular experiment face underscore landmarks. So we have started the execution. The first cell will start creating the parent run and then the child run, and then we can just start running. So first a few cells are pretty much simple cells, just do some data loading and some of the summarization of the data. Uh, then then in this fourth cell we will see a sample image, input image, and this is important because you see that these are hand annotations of the facial features, and this is what we use to train our model, and we will see that this visualization is all captured in MLflow automatically. So under this parent run, we see that we executed 4 cell and 4 runs are captured. Let's go to the last one. The last one has a cell output, and we have the code of the cell, uh, and uh, and we also have the image. So code consists of exactly what was executed and this image. So we can always come back to this run and see that what our data really looked like. And then we can go ahead. Now we split the data into training and test, and we can start the training process. Now it will train the model. I'm using only one epoch. Training takes a while and the model upload takes some time. But even with very simple settings, we produce a very decent output. So the training is going on, training completed, and now it will upload the model to MLflow. So every piece of information about this notebook execution is captured in the same run of the MLflow. And in the end, we run the prediction. And we also want to save the output of this prediction also, because when we are reviewing our model, we would like to see that what really was produced by that particular model. Okay, so we need to relog in because our system logged out. All right, so we have all the runs, and let's look at the model. Okay, so our model was also recorded here in MLflow. This was the particular structure of the neural network. So if we tweak anything, we run it again, it will again be captured, and all versions of the experiments will be captured here. And the model is here, and all the details of the model, even the dependencies, the conda file is captured. All the parameters that were used, this came from the auto logging capability, and even all the matrix are available. If the matrix have a single value, then those are captured. If they have multiple value, we will see a line here. So and all the model related summary and everything is yes, this is the summary of the neural network which is captured. Matrix I already showed before. So yeah, we have captured all the details here. Let's look at the prediction. So this is the predicted image. So the red dots were the hand annotations, and the blue dots are our prediction. So in some cases it's not as good, but in many cases it's a pretty good result. And this was just one epoch of training, our first version, and it worked so well. So now let's since we have a model, let's register the model, that model version, and see how we manage the models in MLflow. So we register a model, we can store it as a version of an existing model, or we can create a new model. Both capabilities are available. And we go to the model management page of MLflow. And in here, you can see that a new version is captured. Let's go to the model and we will see that now we have a third version. So second version was in staging, third version is new. So let's migrate the third version to staging environment. And this is how we manage the life cycle of our models. And now the third version has reached the staging. So yes, so that concludes our demo for the neural network training, and we saw that how neatly it captures all the details of our experiments. In the end, I want to show the capability of with SageMaker, because many of us use SageMaker in AWS environment, and MLflow kernel can be used in SageMaker very easily. The key idea is that SageMaker Studio supports a custom Docker image. So we can create a Docker image with our MLflow kernel and use that Docker image to launch a SageMaker Studio instance. And then the image will already have that MLflow kernel, and we can use that kernel for our MLflow tracking. And we provide a free image that you can use, and I will demonstrate that shortly. All right. So this is a SageMaker studio environment. So first step in SageMaker is to create a new user. And we basically just go there, add user, and pick a name. And to this user, we need to give certain permissions, so we can use an existing role or create a new role with certain permissions based on the resources or S3 bucket that this user needs to access. And we can skip all the optional features. So once the user is created, the next step will be to attach an image, and that's where our image that we create in the container repository comes into the play. All right, so demo user is created. So let's attach an image. So to attach an image, it will ask for a URI of the image. This URI can be obtained from the repository. So if you have your own ECR repository, just go there and copy the URI and paste it over there. Or you can use the URI from MLflow kernel GitHub page, which we offer for free in infant store distribution. So in fact, this particular page comes from the infant store distribution, and it's the same image that is available on that MLflow GitHub page as well. So we copy this MLflow kernel image URI, and we will paste it there to attach our image. Hit next. It will take a few seconds. So we have to give a name. It does not take a space or underscore or hyphen there for that name. And then we give a display name. Any description is fine. And hit next. In here, we have to give the kernel name. Kernel name is MLflow underscore kernel. So it has to match that. And that is it. So this image is created. This version is attached. The version number is 1. And the next step is to just launch the app. And when we launch the app, then it will create an instance with that particular image that we specified. And it will take a few minutes. So it basically creates an instance. By default, it creates a t3.medium instance, but you can later on change your instance type. It also does the mounting of your EFS volume. When you create the user, it creates an EFS volume, which is used as the storage for all your notebooks and the work you're doing. So while all that is going on, so this will take this much time only for the first time for that user. For other users which are already there, when you launch, it does not take that much time. So like, for example, I had this another user which has some applications already running. So for them, if I run, it will create the application quickly. But looks like my other run is also ready. Yes, so we have this instance ready. Now in here, we now launch a notebook. We can select the image and the right kernel. So we select this MLflow kernel here. The version 1 was attached, and we create a notebook. Now this notebook already has the MLflow kernel attached to it. And when the kernel is ready, we can go and go to the shell and configure the kernel, because we have to make sure that it is pointing to the right MLflow instance. So the configuration is same as I showed earlier in your notebook environment. Just to point the tracking URI to the right environment, and you select the experiment name that you want to use for tracking. And if you make any modification, you go back and restart your kernel there. And now we have a notebook which is ready to use. So just a simple example here, we will do a print hello world, or you can use any other neural network training code that you have. So again, it will run the execution, do the runs, create the MLflow runs behind the scene, and record all the activity. So the experiment name was MLflow Kernel Demo. So we go there and we see that a few seconds ago we had a new run, and in this run we should be able to see our code and the output. All right, so that concludes our demo for the SageMaker integration as well. And that is it. So I'll take any questions.
That was a chat question about the open source nature. Do you want to expand on that, Jitendra?
Yes, so MLflow kernel is completely open source. It is Apache licensed, and in fact, I would love to have contributors trying it out, or suggesting improvements or adding new features to it. As I pointed to the GitHub URL, just please feel free to try and let us know.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I joined a little late, so I'm sorry I missed the initial part where you probably shared the link. It'll be helpful if you share the link again. And yeah, I would love to try it out. Thank you for the answer.
Sure, sure. So basically, we will publish the recording of the webinar, so you can all go back and take a look at that. And MLflow kernel GitHub link is basically, if you search for MLflow kernel, you will find the link, or just send me a note, and we would love to share. I mean, if you send me a note with any feedback.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll work with you on that. Yeah. I have a question, Jitendra.
Yeah.
So non-image binary files, do we capture those as well in the MLflow kernel recording in MLflow?
Yes, so anything that is produced as an output uh, to the cell, it will be captured. For example, if it is some graph that you have produced or some audio files, all those will also be recorded automatically behind the scene. Because so I mean, if we look at the key motivation behind MLflow kernel is like when we do the cell execution, there are a bunch of artifacts that user generates, say, for example, files and any other output. So we have a log library that, okay, you call the logging and it will MLflow logging library, and it will log everything into MLflow. But if which is something which is rendered on the screen is
Right.
usually lost and forgotten. So
Right.
that's what MLflow kernel guarantees, that anything that you log into the screen is not lost and forgotten. It is always available and you can refer to it.
Right. I often do things like if there is a pandas data frame, you can just print the head that's basically the first 5 lines of the data frame, those sort of things into the cell output. So those sort of things obviously will be captured, right?
Yes, yeah. And actually that's very crucial also, because when we suppose we go back to an experiment which we did 10 days ago, now we have forgotten even what was the nature of the data, or what exactly happened there. And some of these pieces of information helps us put together what really happened. So that really empowers the data scientist.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. If I can ask a question of the attendees, are you folks using Jupyter Lab or are you folks using SageMaker? Any thoughts on the environment that you're using? SageMaker Studio is what I meant. Ah, Jupyter Lab on Kubernetes. Okay, nice. Is that with Kubeflow? Kubeflow has a way to do some pod things that lets you load Jupyter Lab in a pod. Is that with Kubernetes or just with Kubeflow or just plain Kubernetes? Ah, okay. So Sri says here that he's using it with Kubeflow and just plain Kubernetes, not with Kubeflow, but just plain Kubernetes. Interesting. Yeah. We were just wondering whether the Kubeflow pod way of running Jupyter Lab is useful at all, and how popular is SageMaker Studio. Those are some thoughts. Very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, since we have the we have a Docker image, so hopefully in even in Kubernetes environment, we should be able to launch that, and MLflow kernel should be available. And an MLflow service is like a free service, so accessible from anywhere. So I think the whole setup should be able to replicate in a Kubernetes environment very
Quickly.
easily. But yeah, we would be happy to work with you if you wanna give it a shot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for attending. And yeah, we were happy to have your feedback and see your experience with MLflow kernel. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jitendra.